Hello, I'm Jonathan Homan, and today I'll be introducing today's Friday Five. We will be talking about affirmative action and its effects in institutions of education.
So the question is, can we have diversity without affirmative action?
Affirmative action, as is today in the modern sense, is completely optional for institutions to take up.
So we have to discuss, is affirmative action even working at that point? Because exactly, the institutions that already want that diverse atmosphere for their schools or institutions or anything, they're already making the effort, and that's just something that they're using to, on top of it, prove that they're being diverse and allowing a diverse community on their campus. So what do we do for those people who may not necessarily want it but may need it? Or, it's like kind of all that relative idea of what's needed and what's not needed.
To me, affirmative action always is associated with quotas, and quotas necessarily is not a thing as of now because certain states outlaw quotas. But quotas, the idea of it is not necessarily faulty because it's saying that the institutional population should be demographically similar to the U.S. total population, in that if blacks make up 12% of the population in the U.S., they should make up 12% in so-and-so institution. The flaw that people see with this, though, is that blacks may not be as skilled as their white counterparts.
Not just blacks, but
any kind of minority. This is like a very racist attitude to have towards minorities. However, they do show statistics of minorities not necessarily achieving the kind of academic success as their white counterparts.
So I went to a high school that was focused around international affairs, and it was very diversity based and diversity driven. I know that there are many high schools, specifically around Philadelphia, that are big and they have 2 gymnasiums as well as a separate eating space, whereas my high school had one place that doubled as an eating space and a gymnasium. These bigger high schools are not necessarily high performing. They're pretty low as opposed to the school that I went to. So I'd like to bring up the question, what is the correlation between funding and affirmative action?
I'd say there's a very strong correlation, because when you look at funding in comparison with affirmative action, when the Philadelphia School District decides which schools get more funding, they're effectively deciding on different reasons, maybe that are different than effective education techniques. Like with your school, you were outperforming these schools that were a lot more well-funded than yours, as you described. And that's not necessarily fair that you got less funding in response. And I think their logic was, by giving more funding to these underperforming schools, the money would then make them perform more. But that's not necessarily the case, because when you don't have that, when you don't have that drive to do better, then you're not going to do better. And with affirmative action, then, when colleges that use these affirmative action programs, some of them are really choosing the best of these groups that they're trying to get to go to their institutions. Some of them aren't, though, and they just want that diversity rating. And some of you may be thinking by the tone of our stances, we're against affirmative action, but I can speak for myself, I'm not. Because when it's done right, it can be a really good thing. When it's done wrong, however, to be quite frank, minorities look bad, because it's like you're giving these minorities access to higher education, they're not using it properly. But if they're not the right people for that institution, then obviously it's not going to go well. That's why I think that when you use affirmative action to benefit people of lower socioeconomic status that actually want to go to college and will try hard, you're doing a good job, because they're not able to go, but that doesn't mean they're not capable to go. And that can raise diversity when you have people who are in the admissions offices who have an open mind about people of different colors and creeds.
We also have to acknowledge the fact that this country has different districts and different school districts that have their own set of rules and academics that are not the same for everyone. So some person, I know a friend of mine who grew up in West Virginia, didn't learn nothing about science, nothing. So when he came here, he had to start from scratch basically. He had no idea how a lot of science worked. So that's just one really good example of how disproportionate the education system in our country as a whole is. And we focus so strongly as a result of that on statistics and standardized testing, which also does not correlate well to what are you learning and are you learning it well. It's just, here's a basic set of what you need to learn, and then those teachers feel like they have to teach those things and just basically get their students to memorize it and understand it enough that they can perform well in the test. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they understand what they're learning and that they're going to retain it later on.
And I'm seeing a theme within our discussion that you can't just isolate an issue and then act on that one issue. Like, issues are interconnected. There's a whole web of issues that have varying degrees of dependability among the other issues. Like affirmative action in regards to education, public school education, then public school education in regards to standardized testing. You can't just fix one and expect the rest to follow you. Like, you have to fix all of them.
All right, everyone, that concludes today's Friday 5.